Welcome to Green TV, the show that focuses on positive Green New Deal solutions, eco-jobs for the economy, solar jobs, wind jobs, geothermal jobs, rail jobs, efficiency jobs, conservation jobs, and of course, independent Green Party and Green Party candidates running for local, state, or federal office. I'm Carey Campbell. With us on the show today is Gail Parker of the Independent Green Party and Kristin Combs of the Pennsylvania Green Party, Philadelphia Green Party, and candidate for local office, City Council at large in Philadelphia. Take it away, Gail Parker.
Oh, welcome, Kristin.
Welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yes, it's so nice of you to be here in the studio with us.
Absolutely.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, where you're from, and what got you into politics.
Sure. So I'm from Texas. I was born and raised in Texas. I went to school in Texas. I went to college in Texas, and then I went to grad school in Pennsylvania. I went to Penn University, and I did my master's degree in secondary education. I taught in public schools when I was doing my master's, and I absolutely fell in love with Philadelphia. So since I've been an adult, since I've been choosing where I live, I've been a Philadelphian by choice and fallen in love with that city. And while being there, have seen the tragedies that have happened to my students and have really been wanting to fight for changes for them instead of just continuing to let them suffer. And that's kind of how I've been getting involved in politics.
I see. And did you feel compelled to run for office or inspired, and why?
That's a great question. I think I'd say I felt inspired to run for office. My students fight every day. It's interesting. You have students that you'll talk to in the suburbs and you ask them what they want to do with their lives, and they'll say that they want to be an astronaut or they want to be a doctor, right? One of my history teachers asked my students what they want to do with their lives, and the most common answer was they want to survive, which is just a really different kind of answer, right? And so I'd say my students are an inspiration to me for why it's important that I run, and it's important that people who are in touch with their daily lives run for office.
You mentioned your students. Now, how long have you been a teacher?
I've been a teacher for 6 years. This is my 6th year.
6 years. And what grade do you teach, or do you bounce around? Is it just one grade?
Yeah, I've bounced around a lot. I taught my first 4 years at a high school. And that high school was one that during budget cuts in Philadelphia, they closed. So I lost those students and had to move to a different school. The school I'm at now is a 6 through 12. And since I've been there, I've taught 8th grade. I'm now teaching 9th and 12th this year.
There is compelling issues that got you into the race. Would you tell us a little bit about those issues? You have positive solutions for the schools in Philadelphia?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that's going wrong in Philadelphia right now is they've canceled teachers' contracts. The school district of Philadelphia is the only school district in Philadelphia that does not have local control of their school district. It's been taken over by the state. We have a state-run school board that makes all the decisions for us, so we have no control over our schools. One of the things that I'd really like to fight for is getting an elected school board back in Philadelphia. And then once we have that, be able to fight to restore community control in our schools. So I'm a big proponent for community schools, focusing on getting behavioral health systems into the schools, getting health clinics into the schools, having these things be partnerships within the schools instead of having them be isolated things outside the community. I want our schools to really be a stronghold within neighborhoods like they used to be, and not be these separate things that often neighborhoods are fighting against.
Kristin Combs, Green Party candidate for City Council at large in Philadelphia. Kristin, I just heard you say that the school board in Philadelphia isn't elected?
It's not elected.
What in the world happened there?
We were told that our budget was in such dire crisis that we couldn't manage our own school board. And so it was taken over by the state. We have the School Reform Commission as the appointed board that manages our school system. 3 of the candidates are appointed by the governor, the other 2 are appointed by the mayor, and the only way they can ever be disbanded is for them to disband themselves. They have to vote themselves out of existence. There's no other way for them to ever be disbanded.
Well, how long has the school board in Philadelphia been unelected?
I believe it's 10 years now.
My goodness.
Yeah.
My goodness. We have, Gail and I are both running for local office this year. I'm a declared candidate for Braddock District Supervisor in one of the 9 magisterial districts in Fairfax County, and the school budget is a very important part of the Fairfax County budget. The school board is, by the way, in Fairfax County, elected.
As it should be.
Oh my goodness, I can't imagine that 52% of the Fairfax County budget, which is around over $6 billion when you include the capital infrastructure budget along with the general fund. So 52% of the budget, roughly 53%, goes to the schools, and the County Board of Supervisors vote on that budget, which then moves over to the school board, and the school board then decides on how allocates the budget and how the budget will be spent. How does that function in Philadelphia? Does it sort of the same way? Or?
Yeah, it's a little bit the same way. So the school district meaning this school reform commission, sets the budget and then kind of expects for everybody else to come up with the money. So the city has to come up with a portion of the money, the state comes up with the money, and then there's some of the federal money. And so city council does have responsibility for coming up with Philadelphia's portion of the money. They just have absolutely no say in how any of that is spent, and nor does any other elected officials within Philadelphia.
Normally, I would expect when a commission is put in place like that there would be certain criteria that the schools would have to meet in order to be self-governing again. But this commission did not have those sort of provisions in place?
No, the only way they disappear is if they decide that, and there's no set criteria, just if they decide that the school district is ready to govern itself again. So and vote themselves out of existence.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
You can't be elected to city council. Kristin Combs, Green Party candidate for city council at large in Philadelphia. You can't be elected there and then vote that the school board is an elected body.
Right.
That's very different from around these parts.
Right.
And that rolled out of the governor's office there or the state legislature?
A state legislature. It was an amendment to the school code of Pennsylvania. Yeah. So one of the things is we have a new governor who's trying to work on forcing the SRC out of its position. So there is the possibility that new legislation at the state level could go through to change the way that they disappear, but not at the city level.
We're in Virginia, we're a Dillon law state, and you can certainly, and the Dillon law essentially, Gail, correct me if I get this wrong, essentially says that the state legislature has all powers over local office that they haven't already specifically granted to school boards or to county government or to, I get it right, Gail?
Yeah, municipalities.
Municipalities. And so you could see a situation, a scenario where something like what has happened in Philadelphia could occur here. Positive solutions. I think that's where Gail was taking you in your campaign for city council at large. Kristin Combs, Green Party candidate. Would you like to name us one or two?
Sure. So, I mean, one of the things that City Council can fight for, at least, is the schools that we do have. And while we don't have a direct say, we can put pressure on the SRC, the School Reform Commission, to start turning the public schools that we do have into community schools. Another problem that we're having is with the charterization and the privatization of our public schools. We can also put pressure on the school district and the SRC to stop putting funding into these charter schools, and then instead of that, put that funding towards community schools. Community schools, to me, is really the big positive solution that we need in Philadelphia. It would support our kids, it would support the needs that they have because of the poverty that they face, and it would be the best solution.
You know, I want to go back just to that budget. I'm an accountant, by the way. Gail is a professional budget analyst, so we always like to, and we've been co-chairs of county budget committees and things like that over the years, so it's always fascinating to us, the fiscal side of issues. And you were describing the mechanism for funding schools in Philadelphia, and I mentioned in Fairfax County, It is the Board of Supervisors that allocates the 52% of the funds. Now, the school board, Ms. Garcia, the current school superintendent, has, for example, in this budget fiscal year, has made her proposals to the county. But those are only proposals. The actual dollar figure is set by the vote of the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors, and of course they consult with the civic associations, the Fairfax Federation of Civics Associations, where I was vice president, and Gail worked on the budget and transportation committees, and the law enforcement committee as well, I think. Gail, is that right? You were chair of that, I believe. And so it apparently works a bit different in Philly?
So not really. It works the same way. The difference is that Philly is in such a dire situation that the budgets that they're turning in is that this is the absolute bare minimum that we would need to even function and stay open at our current levels, which are already not high enough to truly support our students. So the budget that they're turning in is already completely inadequate, but it would at least keep schools at the levels that they're at now, which has not enough counselors. We have part-time nurses in our school. The school that I teach at has a nurse 3 days a week, even though we have several diabetics, several asthmatics. I mean, it's unacceptable to not have a school nurse in a 6 through 12 school every day of the week. So the budgets that they're turning in are underfunded budgets, and so when they're turning in this, they're saying this is absolutely the money we have to even open school on time.
You're watching, go ahead, Gail, I'm sorry.
Kristin, could you tell us a little bit more about how large are the schools in Philadelphia? I grew up in a very small town. The high school had, or the school had 150 students total. So how large are the schools in Philadelphia?
They're pretty varied. So the school that I'm at, the school itself is about 530 students, but like I said, it's a 6 through 12. So we have about 250 in middle school and then about 300 in high school. But then we also have high schools that are about 1,500 students. The big thing is our class sizes are huge. All of our class sizes are maxed out at about 33 students.
And do you support renewable energy use in the schools? For example, we would propose here in Fairfax County that the public buildings have solar panels installed on them, reduce the utility bills so that more money could be used to fund true educational functions or purposes. So do you support something like that in Philadelphia?
Absolutely, and I think that would be part of a Green New Deal to start with, right? It would be part of building up green jobs that would help to stop unemployment rates and all of that. I think that Philly is in such a dire poverty situation that we're maybe not up to that yet. It would be a building step. And I think it's one we absolutely have to reach. That would be part of this Green New Deal, right? Introducing these alternative energy sources that would help to lower costs over time. One of the things we're really trying to push right now, because it's an easier fix and it's something that could happen immediately, is we're trying to do rooftop urban gardens in some of our schools, because honestly some of our kids are starving and they don't have access to healthy foods. And that's it helps with insulation of the building, so it lowers heating costs, it lowers cooling costs to have the urban garden up on top, but it also provides these healthy foods that they don't have access to.
You're watching Green TV. On the show with us today is Kristin Combs, Green Party candidate for City Council at large in Philadelphia, and of course my buddy Gail Parker, the Independent Green Party of Virginia. And of course, since we're talking about schools, the Independent Green Party candidates declared so far this year for school board in Fairfax County are a husband and wife team.
Oh, that's awesome.
By the way. Dr. Catherine Pettigrew, who ran for state senate for the Independent Green Party 4 years ago, and Pete Marchetti. Pete Marchetti will run at large in Fairfax County as you're running for city council at large. And Dr. Pettigrew, a professor, will run in Braddock District, where I'm running for Braddock District supervisor. Back to talking about the schools.
Sure.
A key number that in many of the budget hearings and discussions that we've been involved in over the years is students per class. What in the school where you teach Kristin Combs, Green Party. What's your average class size? And that's 6th grade through 12, right? Where you are?
Yeah, so the contractual maximum class size for elementary school is 30 students, and then for middle school and high school is 33 students. That's the average class size right now.
And that's what you're seeing.
Yeah, that's what we're seeing. Some schools, my school is lucky because I have a principal that is very, very supportive of teachers, and so he would rather put the little bit of extra budget that he has towards hiring another teacher and trying to keep our class sizes down. And so we are a little bit under that max number, but I've talked to teachers at schools that have special ed classes with 40 students, which
well, that's actually most
really difficult.
Most of the studies we saw, Gail, and the things that we have worked together on indicate, particularly in a class like that you need a smaller class size. The number that sticks in my mind for the younger folks was 15 to 22. Now that's when and your experience now as a teacher at this level, 6th to 12th grade, what we heard in the budget meetings was, well, you know, if the class gets a little few more students as they're older, it's not as bad, but it's absolutely essential that the classes stay small in the lower grades. Is that your memory of
yes,
that?
That's my understanding too.
Is that your experience, Kristin Combs?
It's going to depend at on the school that you teach at. So the way that the system's set up right now, right, we have these charter schools that cherry pick out students that have parental involvement, and we have the magnet schools, right, that have the kids that have the higher test scores and they apply and go to those schools. Those schools probably could handle higher class sizes. Schools like mine, the neighborhood schools, have students that have less parental involvement. They have higher needs. They're the ones who are in the highest poverty situations, and they need more support. And so having big class sizes with that population doesn't work. They need more.
Kristin, Pittsburgh sort of reinvented itself, and I was just absolutely amazed at how beautiful that city is. Does Philadelphia have a similar plan to revitalize itself? And if so, could you tell us about your position as candidate for city council to support a plan like that? Or
Sure, absolutely. One of the things that a lot of people talk about, the current candidates out there, other than me, are talking a lot about how to build up the city, but what they mean by that is building up Center City, building up downtown. I don't hear a lot of talk about building up neighborhoods. When they talk about neighborhoods, they talk a lot about neighborhood blight, and they talk about, like, let's get camera systems in there, let's get ways to monitor crime. And I think that's where I'm different from the other candidates, is I think it's really important that we start building up our neighborhoods, that we start building these communities, having the community centers be really vital and thriving in these, building up the parks, right? Having these things that students can go to, that parents can go to, where they can take their kids, and not just focus on big business and big buildings within Center City. We have to build up the whole city if we're going to really take revitalization seriously.
And I believe that you also support rail, like high-speed rail along the interstate corridors.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I do. And Philly has an okay rail system, but it could absolutely improve.
Kristin Combs, Green Party candidate for City Council at Large in Philadelphia, on Green TV with us today. Thank you for tuning in. Maybe we could just talk briefly about the Green Party nationwide. And of course, Dr. Jill Stein, the Green Party nominee for president in 2012, has now launched her exploratory committee, and that has created a lot of excitement to explore whether she will be a Green Party candidate for president. And of course, this is the earliest that any Green Party presidential candidate has gotten out of the blocks with fundraising. And of course, the day of her announcement received an exclusive on ABC News and a lot of coverage. Yahoo received, so that's quite a big development. Other folks being talked about as possible candidates, of course, for the Green Party: independent candidate Bernie Sanders, U.S. Senator, and some folks like Gail and myself, like Mike Bloomberg, former New York mayor, New York City. Tell me your thoughts on Dr. Stein's launching her exploratory committee for the Green Party nomination for president.
Absolutely. I was lucky enough to be there and get to hear it, and it was fantastic. I think she has some great stances. And one of the things that I think was a little bit different from her campaign last time around is she really didn't seem afraid to ruffle feathers. And I appreciate that. I think that people are ready for that. I think that they're ready to really hear the deals that we need, right? They're ready to hear the solutions that we need. They don't want the standard answers. They don't want the stuff that they've heard out of these legacy parties for years and years and years. They want these real solutions. And I think that Jill talked about that. I was very impressed with her stance on education. I love that she tied in that if we're going to really focus on education, we also have to face poverty, because that's been my experience, that if we don't meet their daily needs, we're not fixing education. I was impressed.
Hungry children don't learn very well.
They don't. It's really hard to focus in the classroom when you're focused on a growling stomach or on the fact that your mom's on drugs, or, you know, it's just, school isn't your focus then.
As a workaday teacher, and Dr. Stein of the Green Party in her announcement of her exploratory committee made exactly the point you made, Gail, and the point you made, Kristin Combs, and that the Green Party is for making sure every child comes ready to learn, and that means a secure home environment and the necessary nutrition to be ready to learn.
Yes. Well, Kristin, could you expand a little bit on why that is important? Is it a moral issue, or is it a practical issue to see that our children are well educated?
I would say it's a moral imperative that we are educating our students. I think every student has the right, the absolute human right, to be educated. And when we're not doing that, we're failing them. And more than just the right to be educated, I think they have the right to a meaningful public education. It's more than just saying we need to give them school choice or we need to give them vouchers. They have the right to go to a good public school. And we need to provide that for them.
Kristin Combs, Green Party candidate for City Council at Large in the big city, Philadelphia. Other Green Party, if I may, Gail, I don't know if you had thought there queued up. The other Green Party folks, Glenn Davis, for example, has been very impressive. I understand that Glenn Davis of Philadelphia, I believe he's the chairman of the Philadelphia Green Party.
He is right now, yes.
And a veteran. I've met Glenn and very impressed by him, and encourage him to run for office. And Sherry Honkala, the Green Party nominee for vice president in 2012, ran for sheriff in Philadelphia, and Carl Romanelli, Green Party candidate for U.S. Senate. Those are some of the Pennsylvania Green Party folks who I know and respect for their diligence and discipline. Tell us about more Green Party leaders in Pennsylvania and Green Party candidates.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, Sherry has been super influential in my campaign. She's one of the people who talked to me about it, really encouraged me to go ahead and dive in, even if it was going to be hard, doing it as a public school teacher. Sherry Honkala is fantastic. Hugh Giordano ran as a state rep several years ago, and he did great. His first time running got, I think, 20% of the vote in his district, which is impressive as a Green candidate. I mean, he really got the name out and got recognition. And he's been helping out on my campaign a lot too. Our state chair recently turned in his ballot signatures. He got shot down by 2 signatures after getting challenged. He turned in way more than necessary to get on the ballot.
What was he running for?
He was running for state rep.
State rep.
Yeah.
That's not Paul Glover, is it?
No, this was Jay Sweeney.
Jay Sweeney.
Jay Sweeney. He turned in way more than enough signatures, got challenged by a Republican, and lost the challenge by 2 signatures. Now,
petitioning in Pennsylvania is a big challenge.
We've
really got just a couple of minutes. Statewide office, how many signatures are required to get on the ballot in Pennsylvania?
Depends on what you're running for, and the way they do their formula is that you need 2% of whatever the highest vote getter was in the last election that happened in the district that you're running in.
Kristin Combs, Green Party candidate for City Council at large. How many signatures do you have to get in Philadelphia City to get on the ballot? For example, for us here, for local office, 125 valid. That means collecting about 250. Normally takes about 40, 80 hours to do that, going door to door. Would you say, Gail, is about right?
Yeah, that's right.
So this is actually me being in a lucky situation this time around. I'm only, which is way more than you guys need, going to need 1,325 this time around. And that's because the last election in the city of Philadelphia was a special election, and so it was a really low turnout. Now, typically for city council, I would need about 3,000.
3,000. We thank you so much for coming on Green TV today. Kristin Combs, the Green Party Philadelphia, running for City Council at large.
Absolutely.
Gail Farrell-Parker, Independent Green Party. Always a pleasure, ma'am.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Kristin Combs. I'm a Green Party candidate for City Council at large in Philadelphia. I'm a public school teacher and a proud member of the Philadelphia Federation of Teachers. Almost every day, students are the absolute best part of it, but they're really being underserviced in the city of Philadelphia. About 10 years ago, the state decided that Philadelphia needed to be taken over. They said that our school districts were in such dire budgetary shape that we couldn't run ourselves anymore, and they put an appointed school board in place. It's appointed by the governor, it's appointed by the mayor, and now we have this appointed school board that makes all the decisions for us. That has to stop. We need elected school board in Philadelphia. We know our students best. We know what they need, we know our parents, we know their needs, and we should be able to elect the people that make the decisions for their schools. Once we have control back of our schools, we can start to make real changes in these schools. Our schools are facing privatization. Many of our schools are being closed or turned into charter schools. When this is happening, we can't make changes because all these money and all of our good students are being cherry-picked out of the schools. If we put a moratorium on charter school expansion, we could start putting those money and resources back into schools and build community schools. These community schools could be a stronghold in the neighborhoods. We could put health centers into the school. We could put behavioral resources into the school. We could put daycares into the school. Build up schools that really are the center of the communities again. They're a place where parents and students trust, where they feel safe and they feel at home. Another way that our city is being privatized is through this big standardized testing movement that's happening across the country. When our students are being tested constantly, they don't have time for authentic learning. What I mean by that is elementary students are being tested on reading, writing, arithmetic, right? The big 3 R's. But they don't have time to play. There have been all these studies out recently that have talked about how important it is to give small children time to play. They say that when they have time to play, they learn empathy because they learn what hurts people and what doesn't. They learn to make their own rules. They learn problem-solving skills because they have to make up their own rules and they have to figure out what fits together. And that these are real, authentic ways to figure out how the real world works. But we're not giving our students time for that because we're focusing on teaching them how to fill in bubbles for the right answers. And in high school, we're taking away music, we're taking away art, we're taking away time for sports. All these things that teach our students to be social and work together and have other life skills that diversify them. We need those things in schools as well. And we need more than just good schools. If our students aren't having good home lives, they can't focus on school. And the way we're going to give them those good home lives is by focusing on workers' rights. Every worker, no matter what field they're in, deserves the right to unionize. They deserve the right to collective bargaining. As a councilwoman, I would fight for paid sick leave for all workers. I would pay for all workers to have paid maternity leave or paternity leave with their newborns or their newly adopted children. And I would fight to raise the minimum wage to a living wage. We shouldn't have anyone that's working full-time and still living in poverty. That's just unacceptable. If you're working full-time to support your family, you should be able to support your family on that wage. We have to raise the minimum wage to a living wage and continue to raise it so that it is always a living wage. Thank you very much. I'm Kristin Combs. I'm an independent Green Party candidate for City Council at Large in Philadelphia.